everyone, I'm Heather the Traveling Storyteller, and last week we read The Korean Countryside by Sally Bereen, and we're going to continue reading it today, starting with chapter 3. But all of the countryside in Korea does not necessarily reflect agronomy, for there are other distinctly rural areas where the harvest comes from the sea. To see this, Yongshik decided the very best place to go was off the southern tip of the country to the island of Jeju-do. It was a 1-hour flight from Seoul, and for Yongshik, the very first trip by plane. Upon arrival, we again had a jeep to travel, but aside from that, nothing else was the same. Windy today, bear with me guys. The island is of volcanic origin, a place of rocks. When and women it's been described. Walls of lava rock protect the houses from the wind, and with the straw thatched, roofs are tied. Since the elements which prevail in a place have much to do with the appearance of the people you find, the country gentlemen on Jeju-do appeared quite different from the mainland kind. With not much to be expected agriculturally, we did see patches of sweet potatoes and some fruit being grown, and it seemed an admirable place for ponies and purebred cattle, which like prima donnas over the island roam. While most of the island is quite level, the inactive volcano is too. Alpinus a challenging treat, and although Yongshik felt the need for action, I had not 1 inch of interest in Mount Halla at 6,600 feet. We crossed the island in the middle, visiting all of the caves and waterfalls about which the natives boast. Then spent the night in the inn at Sopago, returning the next morning along the coast. And there we found the third part of the island description combined with what I had looked for, hopefully. For aside from the fact the men are fishermen, it is the women who really reap the harvest from the sea. They are larger than the women on the mainland, and their profession is all their own. As from the age of 7, they train for deep sea diving, and there's at least one professional in every home. Armed with nothing but a short spear and a net supported by a floating ground, they swim or are rowed out quite far from the shore, where they dive sometimes to a depth of 30 feet to pry marine products from the rocks and the sand on the ocean floor. On surfacing, they expel their breath with a short whistling sound, and after depositing their catch in the floating net, dive again and again until with exhaustion they return to shore to dispel the cold and wet. They waste little time at the fire, which is kept burning on the shore, although possibly there is a baby to nurse while they stay, but neither rough seas nor temperatures deter them, and all year long they make many trips in a day. We idled along the coast and saw many of these divers working at rest, while others sorted and stacked the produce, and Yongshik said the seaweed was considered the best. Finally, we were back in Jeju City, where our jeep trip had first begun, and since there was plenty of time before our plane departed, we visited the harbor and watched fishermen prepare for their run. From the harbor, we visited a museum where most of the things I saw I knew well. Young Sheik said these were gods at the entrance, but good or evil, even he couldn't tell. He didn't know the wooden shoes belonged to Dutchmen who were shipwrecked off the coast in 1653. And because they fell in love with Korean women, it took them a long time to get back to sea. Well, a basket arrangement in which papooses are carried on the back, and arrowheads and domestic utensils made of stone suggested to me that perhaps our American Indians weren't exactly confined to home. But the most amazing thing we saw was in a park outside the museum, historically preserved and protected with a chain around. I knew they must be important. But to me, they looked like nothing more than 3 round holes in the ground. Young Sheik assured me, however, that from these holes, 3 gods emerged several thousand years ago, and this was the beginning of Korean civilization right here on Jeju-do. And when he saw that with my Western mind I was considering this quite skeptically, he finally added that perhaps of equal importance, we were 3 beautiful women who emerged from the sea. And the end. Thank you guys for joining me again this week, and hope to see you next week. Bye!